Welcome GRD132. What you're going to see next in the video is a recreation of the Children's Place logo. We did it in class and we used the Amiri font. This is an older video coming up from Spring 21 where it's using a different font, but you could still follow along if you missed class. And this will be a hands-on assignment, and this will take a little while. So this will be something for you to dig into a little bit and take some time and really look at fonts and work with fonts and do all kinds of stuff with them. And eventually we'll turn fonts into paths and we'll modify them as much as we can. So hopefully this will be the start of something fun. So what you're going to do first is you're going to click on this link, and like you've done before, it's going to open up a shared link in Gravit. And you're going to be working in Gravit. And if you're not logged in, like I'm not right now, I'm going to log in and make sure it is your login area and not signing up or anything like that. And I'm going to use my Gmail account, so I have the non-pro version. So if I need capital letters, I have to hold Shift and type them or do whatever. Okay, and it's Advertising Pro. You could close out of that. And it's being shared by my other account, so I'll close that. First thing you're going to want to do here is save it to your account. So if this is grayed out, just go here and go File, Save to Cloud As, and make sure you put it in your 132 folder if you have one. And down at the bottom where it has last F, just backspace and change that to your last name, first initial. And remember, they have not yet corrected, I think, a glitch where there's no save button, so just hit Enter and wait until it's synced over here. Okay, now it's synced, and what you're going to have here are 3 pages. There's a Children's Place page, and the image on here I have locked. So on each page there's an image that's locked. So I locked it so we can work over top of it because it's only a reference. These are things I took pictures of around my house. And this one was a bag that was laying around, and I saw that and I was like, oh, that's a good type-based logo. We did that in the graphic design class as well, so we're going to try to match that. So you're going to start with Children's Place, and this is a real logo. I don't know if Children's Place is still around, but I'm going to zoom into this and just take a look at it. And obviously it was on a bag, so it's not really straight, but you can see it's a large place in all caps, and then the Children's is in all caps, and it's just a basic serif font. Nothing special, not even really bold. It looks like almost just a regular weight of it. And I did work on this one before, so I'll go through quick with you, but you can do this with me to practice. And it's going to involve some tracking, because if you notice the letter spacing's tracked out here. This one is not, but we want to make sure we have it close to this. And then also we want to match the font as close as we can. We may not get it exact, but we want to get it as close as we can. And some of the distinguishing characteristics about this font would be, first of all, the R. It has kind of the leg coming down, which kind of curls down. Is kind of rounded at the bottom. I could zoom into this and look at it a little better, and you could see that it's kind of rounded down. So there's no serif on this side. It just kind of rounds off, and we'll see something similar to that. And also here, the C, there's not really a, we talk about like the barb, that thing that sticks up, the beak and the barb. There's no beak down here. There's a beak here, but there's no real barb sticking up. So it's kind of flat here, but it's a little different on the bottom. So it's not the same as it is on the top and bottom. The A has kind of a pointy A here. The L looks straight here, but then the E kind of sticks out. So we're going to try to do the best we can. I'm going to try to match the E. So we're going to look at some of those letters to start. The C, the R, the E, the L, and see how we do. Even the S, because sometimes the S, the way the beaks are on the S's will help us. So we'll look at some of those. And you might say, what do you mean look at some of those? Well, we're going to try to match those. So we're not going to do this. We're not just going to type and then go through our list here of all these fonts. What we are going to do is we're going to find some fonts first, and you could write them down. So you might need something to write down with. And where we're going to go is Google Fonts. Now, before we do that, one thing I just want to point out, and I'll do this later, this is a curly quote instead of a straight quote. And on a Mac, I can do Option bracket and then Shift Option bracket to make a single curly quote as opposed to a straight quote. Now on Windows, and this is from Butterick, there are these codes that you can use. If you could hold down Alt and use 0145 or 0145 I should say, and 0146, just like you could use 0149 for bullet. But that was problematic for some people on Windows, and I did record a video on how to do that where you could use the character map in Windows. And if you have a problem doing this and you can't get a curly quote or a closing single quote, what they call it here, or this would be an apostrophe, I guess, what you could do is use the character map just like I do it in that video. So there's another video where I show you how to do that in Windows. But on a Mac, we'll just use these shortcuts here, so that won't be that tough. But on Windows, if you can't do Alt and a number, whether it's for a bullet or whether it's for even a quote like this or any other special character, you can use the character map and just copy it and paste it in. And again, that's in a video that I already recorded and I think is already posted. All right, so where we're going to go next is we're going to go to Google Fonts. And we just type up Google and just fonts. It's coming up right here, Google Fonts. And it's free. You don't have to do anything special. And these are all the fonts that you have in Gravit. Now, they're in categories, and they're not exactly the same categories. They have sans, sans serif, display, handwriting, which would be script, and monospace. Now, I'm not sure if monospace is slab or not. I think they have a lot of slabs in with the serif, so we might have to go through there. Although we could look at monospace and see what they have listed there. There's probably not a lot of them, but they might be more coding, typewriter type fonts. But anyway, we're going to go through here and you're going to learn a little bit about Google Fonts because there's tons of fonts here to work with, which is nice. You know, they're not the commercial ones that, you know, in graphic design we always work with, but there's a lot of fonts here. So we have a lot at our disposal and we could look through them here a little easier than we can in Gravit. So let me close this up. I don't need this anymore. And I'm going to go back to Gravit. And now that I'm working on Children's Place, what I'm going to do is turn off my layers panel because I don't really need to look at that right now. But I will need to look at the font and we will need to make changes here to tracking, letter spacing, all that kind of stuff over here. So what I'm going to do first to get started, before I even look at fonts, I'm just going to type the Children's, and I have to type it in all caps, the Children's. And this is what I mean. This is a straight quote, so I'm going to highlight this, and on a Mac, I could do, I think, Shift Option bracket and make a curly quote. So I want a curly quote. If you can't do that on Windows, go down to your Start menu and search for Character Map, and then look for it in your font that shows up for like Arial, and then you could copy it and you could paste it in place of the single quote. And again, not a big deal, but it is something you should be aware of. So I'm going to move this over now. You could just go in here and start looking for fonts, but you know, this isn't a good way to look for fonts. They're small. You can't really tell what they are. So we're going to go to Google Fonts because that's where they're listed. So that's nice. And obviously we're looking at serifs. These look like just a plain serif. Now, I already know which one is the closest from doing it before, but I'm going to go through and just kind of show you how to do this. And obviously it's going to be under serif, so I'm going to uncheck all these other ones in Google Fonts. And now looking at this is really hard to see what you'd want. So I want to look at capital letters of, let's see, C, R, E, S, and maybe an E. So I'm going to go up here where it says type something and put C, R, E, S, and maybe an L, just to check that out. I don't think I need anything else other than that as far as distinctive. The R is the one that's really distinctive here. You could look at the A, but we're not going to get it perfect, so I'm just going to try to get the best out of this that I can. So that's what I have right here, and if you want it bigger, you can go as big as you can, and that way you could see if there's barbs, you could see if this is rounded, and you might want to write some down. And also keep in mind, now in this case we're only going to probably use the regular version, but if you need bold versions, you can go in here to Styles. And when we work on some of the bold ones and the smutty nose one, you could go down here and look at some of the bold here, you know, to look at them a little bit better. Now I'm going to go back and just go through here for now. And there's different ways you can view these. You can view them one at a time if that's easier, or you could view them in the boxes, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to look for something that matches. So what I'm going to look for first is this kind of rounded leg at the bottom, where there's kind of the heel is kind of rounded off, and an E that kind of looks like that. Notice the E has the beaks or the serif thing in the middle where it has a beak going up and down, and there's no real beaks on the S or the C. So let's see how we do. And you can see even the bracketing here is smooth, so we don't want anything that's too squarish or angular. So let's see how we do here going through here, and I'll even make this bigger so we could really look at that. And this is what I'm talking about. The bracketing here is really angular on Merriweather, so that's not something I want. And here you can see there's really fine lines. That's too curly. You know, that's getting there. You might look at the bold version, but that C is off because it has a beak and barbs on the top and bottom. So let's keep going down. Now this one has a barb at the top. We don't want that. This is getting closer. That R is kind of closer there, but it's very angular looking. Now, noto serif is close. The S's don't look like the S that I just saw there because they're more squared off. So I don't think it's noto serif, at least as far as what I'm seeing so far. Now, bitter's getting there. I might write down bitter, so I'm just going to take a pen and write down bitter, because that looks kind of close. Now, it does look too angular. If I look at the E, actually, I'm not going to write down bitter. Scratch bitter, because it doesn't have this part here that Crimson Text has. It doesn't have that section there. And again, I'm forgetting the name of that, but it doesn't have the serifs on the E. There is a name for that, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. See, it's not just you. I don't use those things all the time. Libre Baskerville is kind of similar, but it's not rounded, and it has the beaks on the top and bottom. This one is pretty close. I'm going to write down Crimson Text, and I'll give you a little hint. That's the one I actually ended up using. Even though the L, it looks more straighter on the other one, and it's not perfect, that was the closest one I could find. So, you could go through these a little bit more and see if you find any that match up. Maybe I missed one. This one is kind of okay, except it has a beak at the top. This EB Garamon's kind of close, although it's a little more on the rounded side. But it may be one you might want to try out, because the leg is right, and although it is kind of symmetrical top and bottom on the C, which is not how the other one is, this is kind of close. Those were the other ones I found that were kind of close, but you could kind of rule some out as you go. This is obviously too slabby, and matter of fact, the font's called Slabo. And as you go down, I'm looking for R's. This isn't bad, but it has that big square kind of beak on there. These all look kind of slabby. That's kind of similar, but not quite what I want, and it's a little squared off at the bottom. So you could go through these. Amiri, I think that's one that's very close, so I'm going to write down Amiri. So I have Miri and Crimson Text. That looks pretty close. The R looks kind of similar. The E goes up a little bit, so I don't know if some of those lines are a little thin. And the thing is, we could try them out. Frank Rule, I don't think so. It has it has the barb up here, and it has barbs on the S's. How are these S's? These S's look good. This one isn't bad. Volcorn isn't bad. I could write down Volcorn. It's possible. And again, we're looking for ones that are close. So that's what we're doing here. This has some weird angles and stuff. Not that one. Cardo, possibly. But it's not better than the ones I have already. I could write down Cardo. It's possible. I think I had written those down before, but as you go through here, eventually you're going to run out of options because some are going to be way out. So I think the options we have, that's not, although I don't know how to pronounce that, Quattrocento, that's not bad. The R is kind of close and the C is kind of close. I'll just write down Quattro, and I'm getting I have 5 here. I probably don't need any more than that. Neutron is here, or Newton, and it looks a little bold. That's probably the lightest, so it's looking very bold already. And going down here, I'm not seeing any yet. And again, you could go through these as much as you want. But I'm going to try out the ones I wrote down. Unless I find something else, or unless you find something that are better. Because I don't know if I went through every single font. There's a lot of serif fonts. As I go down here, you can see my scroll bars in the middle. So there's a lot of fonts to go through. So, this one, Sorts Mill Gaudi. That's not bad, but the S doesn't look right, and the E doesn't look right at the end. It's more of a traditional serif on the E, not this kind of flat thing at the end. So as you go down, you might rule some things out. You might see some things that catch your attention, some things that you might have to rule out. The C, this one isn't bad, average, although the R is not quite right. But it's not going to be perfect. I'm telling you, even when we get one that's very close, the P is not going to work. So I might write down average and see how that looks, because maybe all in all, this might be a better option. So I'm going to write down average, and I'm going to stop there because they look pretty close, and I did this before, so I'm not going to go down all the way. And here's Crimson Pro, but I have Crimson Text, I think, which is a little less angular than this. Even though you probably weren't aware of that, it's a little less angular. So let's see how that works. I don't think I'm going to go through any more here. I don't want any that are too soft at the bottom, that have these kind of little dips at the bottom of the serif, and I think we're pretty good. So I'm going to go back, and we're going to try that out. So I have a list here of Crimson Text. So I'm going to zoom out now and try to look at this. Now, you could put it right on top, or you could put it close by, and I'm just going to fill up my screen here. I'll zoom out a little bit more, and I'll just try the first one that I have on my list. The first one, well, I'll do alphabetical order. I'll do Mirror. It was a Miri. Let's see how this looks. And it's not bad. The R looks pretty good. The E looks pretty good. The E's a little, it sticks out a little bit. So does the L, but we could always fix that. I'm going to make a copy here just because we're not looking at all the letters, and I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to put my cursor in there and do Control A if you're on Windows, or Command A, and do place. Now, I want to make that nice and big, so I'm going to use Auto Scale Font and make sure Auto is on, and scale it up. And you can see the P is different. We're running into a problem with the P. So let's just worry about this. That's going to be an issue we're going to have to deal with. Let me put this on Auto so that the box goes around here a little better. It is on Auto. For some reason there's more space around there. But let's bring this down. And let's try some others. Let's look at Crimson Text. And that's not too bad. The R looks close. The E still flares out a little bit. The L still flares out a little bit. The S looks pretty good. T looks pretty good. They flare out a little bit. You could go here and go back and put this in Amiri to try it out. See, there's a lot of work. It won't be easy to do right off the bat. Now, I can tell right the T I don't like. It has things sticking up. I don't think it's going to be Amiri. So, and I hate to rule it out just for the T. Let's see what the P looks like. I'm just going to go in here where the H is and put a P in. The P is the same, so that's not going to help us. So I'm going to rule out Amiri. But while it's up here, I'm going to try out Volkhorn and see how that looks. And it's a little bit more on the bold side. The C isn't bad. It's a little, the R isn't quite right. So it's not too bad. I still wouldn't take it over. It looks a little heavier than the other one. And let's try Cardo, see how that looks. And make sure to select Cardo up here. That's not too bad. It's a little, the bottom isn't quite right, but the R's not bad. The E's a little straighter. That L looks a little too sharp. Everything looks a little too sharp here. So I'm going to say it's not Cardo. And let me try average. And remember, you have to click on here and then type it in here. Average. Let's see what average looks like. And it's not bad. I mean, a lot of the letters look pretty good, although they flare up a little bit. And the N's kind of not pointy on the bottom. I didn't look at an A to see what the A looks like. I don't think it's going to be that one. Let's try out the Quattro one. Hopefully I don't have to type the whole word. There's Quattro Cento. And that's not bad. That's not bad at all. I didn't use that one last time. I actually used Crimson Text. It's not too bad, considering we're trying to match this. So let me move this down here. And there's Quattro. That's not too bad. They look a little sharp, but let's put this one in Quattro and see how that looks. And the P looks better. The A, not necessarily because it has that little slant, but the C doesn't look bad at all. I'm going to go with Quattro. I used Crimson Text in my first version, but I'm going to use Quattro. So I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to take a break here. So I'm going to go with Quattro Cento. I didn't think that's a surprise. Now this one is the one I want. And again, the R's not perfect. I think I like that R better, but the P's better, and the A isn't quite. But I think the C's perfect. So I'm going to go with that and see how that looks and see how it works out. Now, the one that is in Crimson Text, I'm just going to delete. So we're going to work with this, or I am going to work with this in Quattro Cento, and I'm going to work with this in Quattro Cento and try to lay it on top. Now I'm going to take a break here, and then in part 2, I'm going to come back and finish this up and try to lay it on top and make it look exactly the way it is based on its line spacing, the tracking, the kerning between letters, which we're going to have to adjust. We're going to do all that in part 2.